So I've got to respond to the Young Turks talking about Marjorie Taylor Greene, this idea of a national divorce. And they were playing these clips, picking her apart, saying she's crazy, she's a nut. Now, I'm no fan of Marjorie Taylor Greene, but she's actually more in line with our founding than the Young Turks calling her crazy and a nut. And I can prove it because the Declaration of Independence is a secession document. The CSA Constitution is a secession document. And the CSA Constitution came from the U.S. Constitution, which came from the Articles of Confederation, which came from the Declaration of Independence. Now, there were some key changes in the CSA Constitution. It just wasn't slavery. And by the way, Young Turks, when the Dred Scott decision came down in 1857, that upheld the Fugitive Slave Clause. So slavery was still legally recognized, even though it had been abolished in many of these states. New Jersey still had slavery, a small percentage of slaves, but they still had slaves or slavery in 1860, 1861. In fact, they didn't end servitude, any form of slavery, till 1866. Delaware, 1901, got rid of all forms of servitude. Hawaii, 1900 with the Organic Act. But I'm going to read to you part of the Declaration of Independence, the CSA Constitution, Articles of Confederation, the preamble to the U.S. Constitution, because the United States was founded on this idea of secession. And when the states in the South seceded from the Union, and that's another thing, people confuse this idea of nation with union. Or our founders didn't refer to us as a quote-unquote nation. Now, they may have talked about a national bank, Alexander Hamilton, but they were talking about a union of sovereign and independent states that were bound by common interest, which is why we had the Articles of Confederation. Now, the Articles were weak, and it was in effect for about 10 years, and then they went ahead and they created the Constitution, but the Constitution came from the Articles of Confederation. But when the CSA seceded, all these states in the South, they first voted on this in their state legislature, then they decided to secede. That's what they did. Then they became part of the CSA. So they weren't traitors. They were doing what our founders did when they broke away from Great Britain. But James Madison, one of the framers of the Constitution, one of our founders, during the 1787 Constitutional Convention, talked about this issue of whether or not the federal government had the right, the power, to stop a state from seceding. Now, of course, we had the decision in Texas v. White. But the reason they came to that conclusion is because we had just gone through a civil war. But they did acknowledge that states, as a collective, could secede. If that weren't the case, that would go against everything in our Declaration of Independence. Go against the very reason why we broke away from Great Britain. Now, here's what James Madison had to say about this issue during the 1787 Constitutional Convention. A union of states containing such an ingredient seemed to provide for its own destruction. The use of force against a state would look more like a declaration of war than an infliction of punishment, and would probably be considered by the party attacked as dissolution of all previous combats by which it be bound. And that's really what the U.S. Constitution is. It's a compact. A contract saying that the federal government is not going to infringe on the rights of the people or the states. That's why we have a 10th Amendment. But let's go to the Declaration of Independence. Now, everybody's familiar with, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, they're endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. But that phrase, all men are created equal, had nothing to do with the equality of the races or equity. It was talking about the rights that were guaranteed as British citizens by Parliament under the ancient constitutions, what they referred to as the ancient constitutions, and they felt that those rights were being violated by the king, and they list all those violations in the Declaration of Independence. But you really have to read the first paragraph of the Declaration of Independence and the last. So it says here, the unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America, when in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, secession. They use the word dissolve, a separation. And to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. Again, secession. You have violated our rights as British citizens, as colonists. We are therefore seceding from Great Britain. But let's go through some of these abuses that they list here. He has refused his assent to the laws, the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. He has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance, unless suspended in their operation till his assent should be obtained, and when so suspended, he has utterly neglected to attend to them. He has called together legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the depository of their public records, for the sole purpose of fatiguing them into compliance with his measures. Dissolving representative houses repeatedly for opposing with manly firmness his invasions on the rights of the people. Obstructing the administration of justice. Bribing judges, basically, making them dependent on the king's will. Is kept among us in times of peace, standing armies without the consent of our legislators. Requiring these soldiers be in these colonist houses without their permission. They could just take what they wanted, eat what they wanted. Cutting off trade with all parts of the world, etc., etc. Imposing taxes without our consent. Depriving us, in many cases, of the benefits of trial by jury. Taking people overseas to Britain to be tried without legal counsel, or very little legal counsel. But you really have to focus on the last paragraph of the Declaration of Independence, and here's what it says. We, therefore, the representatives of the United States of America, in General Congress assembled, which is how they referred to it, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do in the name and by the authority of good people of these colonies, solemnly published and declared that these united colonies are and of right ought to be free and independent states. They didn't say free and independent state or one state. They said free and independent states. That they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved. So this is a secession document. These states, whether they're red or blue, have the right to separate if they want to. You have a right as a parent, as a state, to determine what's going to be taught in your schools. But let's go to the preambles of the CSA Constitution, the U.S. Constitution, because nowhere in the CSA Constitution, in the preamble, or rather the preamble to the CSA Constitution, are you going to find the word slavery. And if that's the only reason that the South was fighting to secede during the Civil War, why isn't the word slavery or the phrase slave labor in the preamble to their Constitution? It's not there. So here's the preamble to the U.S. Constitution. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. Here's the preamble to the CSA Constitution. We, the people of the Confederate States, each state acting in its sovereign and independent character, which is also in the Articles of Confederation, that language, in order to form a permanent federal government, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, invoking the favor and guidance of Almighty God, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the Confederate States of America. So they wanted to form a permanent federal government. The states being sovereign and independent. And states in the CSA, and according to their constitution, states had the right to abolish slavery if they chose to do so. All limitations in the CSA Constitution were put on its Congress, not on the states, because, again, the states were sovereign and independent. Let's go to the Articles of Confederation. Now, there were some weaknesses with the CSA Constitution, as Jefferson Davis found out, because he was limited on what he could do as president of the CSA. And there were several key differences, too, between the U.S. Constitution and the CSA Constitution, but that's for another time, another day. But here are some of the articles from the Articles of Confederation. Establishes the name of the Confederation with these words: the style of this Confederacy shall be the United States of America. Asserts the sovereignty of each state, except for the specific powers delegated to the Confederation. Each state retains its sovereignty, freedom, and independence, and every power, jurisdiction, and right which is not by this Confederation expressly delegated. Article 3. The said states hereby severally enter into a firm league of friendship with each other for the common defense, the security of their liberties, and their mutual and general welfare, binding them to assist each other against all force offered to or attacks made upon them or any of them on account of religion, sovereignty, trade, or any other pretense whatever. Let's jump down to Article number 6. Only the central government may declare war or conduct foreign political or commercial relations. No state or official may accept foreign gifts or titles, and granting any title of nobility is forbidden at all. No state may form any subnational groups. No state may tax or interfere with treaty stipulations, etc., etc. Enter into a league with other nations or some type of alliance, unless those states seceded first. So they could enter into an alliance with another state once they seceded, once they were no longer part of the United States. This confederation and perpetual union. Number 10, when Congress is in recess, any of the powers of Congress may be executed by the committee of the states or any 9 of them, except for those powers of Congress which require 9 states in Congress to execute. Declares, this is number 13, declares that the articles shall be perpetual and may be altered only with the approval of Congress and the ratification of all the state legislatures. So I thought I'd go through this and read to you part of the Declaration of Independence, the CSA Constitution, U.S. Constitution, Articles of Confederation. And time again, I'm showing here that secession is the most American thing you can do. There's nothing in the U.S. Constitution that prevents it. And maybe we should think about a national divorce. We can still trade with each other, have the same currency. But why is Ohio different from California and its political beliefs and its traditions? Why is California different from Florida? So I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, you know what to do. You can also follow me on Instagram, #JasonComposes, or find me at Twitter, Culture Confederacy at Twitter. This is the Culture Confederacy saying peace out, stay safe, everybody. God bless this thing called the United States, and you know how we do it here. This is where the past crashes with the present. I'll catch you next time.